dancing and singing during the show. And that's really the impetus, is we really wanted to see some more singing and harmony around this country rather than shouting and screaming. And so that's really what this movie is about. People think of a movie as a visual experience. This is really an atmospheric movie in the highest sense of the word. So I look forward to people coming and feeling it, coming in and feeling it.
So Ms. Simone is the executive producer of the film. And I'm wondering what messages do you want people to take away after experiencing Soul Doctor?
Oh, there are quite a few. I guess joy, starting with joy, inspiration, the power of community and coming together, and the fact that so many walls that we erect, whether it's through our vision, how we look different, how we sound different, different backgrounds. Underneath all of that, there's so much of the sameness that we all share. And I believe that's one of the biggest connections that my mother, Dr. Nina Simone, and Rabbi SHLOMO CARELBACH had in common. Within their differences, there was such a sameness that they recognized in each other, that they influenced each other, inspired each other. And they both went on to be prolific presences in the world whose influence continues to touch the masses today.
Thanks for that. We have a question from Viv Ashcroft online. The play's based on archival research and interviews. What was that process like? And did you learn any new anecdotes or facts that you hadn't heard before?
Oh, I love that question. The process of doing the research was so exciting as a dramatist, because we were looking for his inner conflicts and the turning points in his life. And wherever we turned, in the least expected places, we heard people who knew Shlomo and were affected by Shlomo in the most random circumstances, and those who were part of his career, and those who knew Shlomo and Nina Simone, and throughout the world. And we did spend about 3 years recording and transcribing interviews with people who were fellow students of his. We did archival research. We did research through the Red Cross to find records in Europe. And the Northwestern University has an extensive archive of the Berkeley Folk Festival in Haight-Ashbury during that time, which was just a wealth, boxes and boxes of just undiscovered relationships, how his life intersected, and Nina Simone's life intersected, really the powers of change and the ways of change during that whole era until today. And when we really were reading about Shlomo's only telling of his own life story, that's when we really discovered the turning point of his transformative relationship with Nina Simone.
So Dari, this is your father's story too. I mean, what's it like for you seeing your dad portrayed on the screen like this?
To me, my father is my greatest teacher, because he teaches me continuously how to be true to yourself. You have to follow the calling of your soul, no matter what anyone else believes or thinks or wants of you. And his ability to transform the world started in the moment where he chose to live outside the box. And to truly live in your heart and your soul, you have to bravely honor that inner voice and break through the confines of what people think we should be and look like and act like. And I believe that the true magic between him and Nina was that they both chose that. They chose to break through and follow the transformation of what it means to touch another person's life entirely. And in that place, we break down the boundaries of love And that's what the movie is really about.
Beautiful. We have a question from Gaddy Elkin from the internet about the iconic fashion of Nina Simone and how it was showcased and reflected in some of the wardrobe choices.
I think that's a Danny question there.
Well, that's interesting, actually. You know, the conceit of the play, which was really a stage play that we captured as a live performance. Basically, it takes place in one setting of the House of Love and Prayer, where Shlomo, as a troubadour, is telling his life story to his holy beggars, which are his holy hippies, and they become the characters in his story and through their imagination. So everyone basically does not have that much of a narrative arc with their costumes, but Nina Simone, we really very much told the phases of her life through her costume, and it really was actually the audience was able to follow the timeline and where she was in her life, her journey through her costume, and I think that was also very true to her character, because I think her costume and her garb, especially as she really reclaimed and was an ambassador to her African roots, the costume became very much her expression as much as her song was. So there is a costume narrative for Nina Simone, and a lot of research went into that, and a lot of stitching and shopping.
A lot of stitching. Any other questions from the house right now? Can you tell us how the stage production, we had a question from Dina Stewart online, how the stage production is different than the film?
It's not, and the experience is it's I think the difference is that we're very proud of this and very happy that we have the success, is that you feel it's a minimalist production, and therefore you really don't feel this divide of $100 million of special effects coming at you. You know, you feel like the story takes place in the center. Shlomo CARELBACH, for most of his career, would really perform from the front of the stage. That's why we're sitting here, and not on the stage. And it was a theater in the round. We actually, on Broadway, we presented it as a theater in the round, and it feels like a theater in the round. And the audience feels safe and part of it, and spontaneously part of the audience of the actual theatrical production. So I hope I'm not disappointing you by saying it's hopefully as close to it as possible.
Great, thank you. Another question online from Beeb Ashcroft for Lisa. How did it feel to watch Naya performing your mother on the screen?
I thought she was refreshing. It was really nice. Mom's been dead about 20 years now. This is the 20th year of her transition. And so for me, who's perhaps one of the most biased Nina Simone fans that exists, I was with the original, you know, so to be able to enjoy everybody's homage to my mother in a way that's not biased, and to be able to recognize that this is their way of honoring her and bringing her to life. I enjoyed Naya's, and I continue to enjoy Naya's rendition of my mother.
Beautiful, beautiful. We have a question online from Dina Stewart. It's insinuated that he and Nina had a romantic connection. How was that accepted by the family?
Well, it's insinuated, but an insinuation is not necessarily a fact. So I think that the audience is allowed to come to their own conclusions as to what they think actually took place. Rabbi Shlomo was never mentioned in my household. I mean, I'll just say that as a fact. I learned about who he is when I met Daniel Wise in 2011 and saw this show for the first time. My mother had a life. She had a rich life. She knew many people. And I think it's better for us to just, can't say better, but in my opinion, as her daughter, I think that you can love someone, you can be close to someone, you can respect and revere and be in contact with someone without it necessarily going to the place that this particular person is insinuating could have happened.
Good answer. Good answer. We have a question from RC Samo online from Fanboy Nation. How many of the original songs written by Dr. Simone and Rabbi Carlebach are in the performance, and how difficult was it adding new songs to move the musical along while keeping the tone of the original works?
Well, almost all of the music is Shlomo Carlebach's melodies and timeless hits, I should say. And the lyrics were written by our very gifted New York David Schechter, who is just a sublime, he was the original director of the show as well when you were involved. And so we have created new theatrical songs, but they were composed by Shlomo. And then there are several Nina Simone songs, whether she composed all of them originally or some of them are traditional, like Sinnerman. They were her songs because she may have taken the ancient hearkening of a traditional melody, but everything Nina Simone did really was Nina Simone. And so you really feel that synergy, the musical synergy of Nina Simone and how it influenced this Jewish gospel, this Hasidic gospel, which was so anomalous and so out of nowhere. So when you're watching or experiencing Soul Doctor, you actually go through a musical journey and you see a cross section of this journey between these two worlds, and how when this cosmic forces of these great musical traditions collide, you have Am Yisrael Chai, you know, you've got Shlomo Carlebach, the Carlebach experience.
Any questions? Sure.
I'm just curious because your parents were such good friends. Did you guys meet at childhood and did you guys become friends? Because I wonder if children of parents become friends too.
Sorry.
The first time I met Lisa was 2 days ago.
We feel like we've known each other all our lives.
Yeah, when I walked into the room, it was like instant, like, this is my sister. It's like a soul sister. And they say that energy can't be created or destroyed. And I believe that soul connections have nothing to do with how many times you met someone, whether you saw them in childhood, whether you know them on the street once or 20 years later. An energy that lives between two people is sacred and always is there. And there's something that was created between our parents that allowed them to create something that lives in each of us, because my father's in my blood and Nina's in Lisa's blood, and we live through that, and because of that, and it's just there.
I don't need to add to that.
Can I just say something of my own experience? I was here when these two very dear friends of mine met for the first time, and I'm sitting here between greatness, and I really felt when they met. We went down for dinner, and we had a few others with us there, and it kind of felt like we were watching Soul Doctor 2. And I got for the first time really what this relationship was, not because of circumstances and backgrounds, as a lot of people like to talk about the Shlomo Nina relationship, which I think had much less to do with the different backgrounds and had to do with many other things that they had in common. But they were just lost as really like sisters who were separated for life. It was like a corny Oprah episode, but it went on and on and on for hours. And I really learned about the story for the first time in such a visceral way. And it's starting to affect me.
It's a very impactful question from Lauren Van Hemert, and I throw it to the three of you. With the uptick in anti-Semitic events in recent years and attacks on the Black community, What's the significance of releasing this film now? And what impact do we think it might have?
Might I take that?
Please.
It's time. It is time. Kiva Moed. The time has come. Period. There's no better time than the present. Everything happens when it's supposed to. We're here for a reason. And a journalist asked me recently, she went on Wikipedia and was not able to find anything out about Shlomo. And she asked me how I felt about that because she felt a little some kind of way about it. And I just said, you know, it wasn't time. Now the time has come. People perhaps are more ready. Our community is ready. Our world is ready. We're ready. The production is ready. And it's being born in a manner that is shining a light upon it on a platform that cannot be ignored. And I feel that like a light, like a match to a flame. We see what's happening in the air right now. You see how all this smoke is spreading across thousands and thousands of miles. I really believe that Soul Doctor is going to have that same impact. And Lord knows it's overdue. So let us pray that since the time has come and the time is now, that the timelessness of this story, the strength and courage and fearlessness of these two individuals, the impact that they had on each other within their own lives, and that they continue to have from the other side will remain timeless and remain just as powerful in the generations to come as it is right now.
Amen.
I, back in 1992, I lived in the ground zero of the Crown Heights riots, which really is a milestone in race relations in general. And the accident had happened on the block, and I had seen weeks and weeks of anger that then boiled to bloodshed, and it started to spread beyond the borders of Brooklyn and borders of New York. And people do not realize from the inside that narrative. When did the Crown Heights riots, the race tensions end? And there was a moment when it ended. SHLOMO CARELBACH and Richie Havens. SHLOMO CARELBACH and Richie Havens. They both called each other and they said they knew each other from way back, and they were so similar. They said, we got to do a peace concert. And they just, our friend Moshe Lieber, put up a bandstand on Eastern Parkway. They blocked off the roads and tens of thousands of people came. And that was the end. That was the end of the racial tension, because they turned all the screaming into harmony. Now I'm going to fast forward. We started showing the film. We were invited to Selma, Alabama for the 50th Jubilee. I'm marching over the bridge and I'm hearing these young people singing these freedom songs, singing in harmony. They pass by the police. They say, I ain't scared of your jail because I want my freedom. And I felt so encouraged. We have to show this movie, and they loved the movie, and they were saying the whole world needs to see this movie. Then I come back to New York after the shutdown, Upper West Side, and I see a whole group of Black young people marching, Black Lives Matter, and we're marching together through the park, and we stop by the police, and they go, NYPD, flick my dick or something. I don't remember exactly what the words were, but it was a four-word with four-letter protest song. And that's how, and it wasn't very conducive to polyphonic harmony or social harmony. And I said to myself, you know what? What's happened is, and I came back from Selma so encouraged, and I said, there is no there are anti-Semitic incidents. And I remember what SHLOMO CARELBACH said. He said, it was his theory. He believed that hatred came from anger. It was just crusted anger. And the way to get rid of hatred is to fill our hearts with joy. And I said, I really am going to spread harmony across America until there's more singing together than screaming at each other. And thank God Fathom Events felt the same way. And we're going to do a harmony across America on Tuesday nights.
Yeah. My father used to say, if I had two hearts, I could hate with one heart and love with the other heart, but I only have one heart, so I only choose to love. And we're in unprecedented times where he used to say, there's nothing more whole than a broken heart. And our hearts have been broken over and over again to let the light in. And we are now at a place in our history where we've all broken open so many times that all we can do is rise in song and fill those broken places with harmony. And Rabbi Nachman used to say, if you talk and I talk, we can't hear each other, it's just noise. But if you sing and I sing, we create harmony. And our job in this generation is to create the most infinite, endless amount of harmony in ourselves, between our communities, between all of humankind. And the story allows us to create harmonies in ways that, unexpected ways, and it uplifts and brings a whole new way of seeing the world.
I think you probably got some good quotes there.
Yes. Yes.
I wasn't expecting to bring this up, but in 1999, I founded a company called Seminar Center, and I had an event, actually called Can Blacks and Jews Get Along? And I had the two debaters, a guy by the name of Al Sharpton and another guy by the name of Rabbi SHLOMO, who wrote Kosher Sex. And it was an interesting argument. That was on the heels of the Crown Heights riots, but my conclusion at the end of the day is, there are incidences like the Crown Heights riots, which are isolated incidents. One incident, it doesn't define anything. What really defines is the unity, and actually blacks and Jews have the history of unity. Going back to,
For now, they might ask my question, but if so.
Black, they were slain, marching together. Andrew Goodman, or got the other two names. So, this movie really inspires me, to enforce that actually that we have more in common than we do even now. So I want to thank you for bringing this.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Danny, there were some controversies about Rabbi CARLEBACH.
They're not giving it to midnight.
Memories of the man
So they're having
that so affected Jewish music, which was so
JFK,
popular.
and I guess
How did it
the
affect
answer
you
is
in the
12:06.
ways you
Saturday,
pointed
we're
out?
done.
Yeah, right now.
I knew Shlomo as a child. My mother dated Shlomo till I was about 6 years old, and my father, who just passed away, blamed the divorce on Shlomo Carlebach. My mother blamed it on the babysitter. So there were 2 points of view. And but I knew Shlomo. I grew up with Shlomo doing be-ins in the house until 3 in the morning, and the hippies coming over, and I would make fun of him with his guitar, "Holy beggar, you have no head." And I did not see him until much later in life, and I ran into him, became close towards the end. Had some close encounters with him, close moments with him. But during that middle period of my time in the Orthodox and Hasidic yeshivas, his music was absolutely taboo and banned. You could not sing Shlomo Carlebach music. It was rock and roll. It was drug culture. It was not modest. You had Shlomo Carlebach, who was embracing women and men and homeless women on the street who were 90 years old, and everyone he saw and met. He was a free, loving, expressive, healing man who fell in love with everyone he met. He was completely uninhibited. I would walk down the street with Shlomo. He was like on a shopping spree for homeless people. He would be absolutely in Candyland today. Walk down the street. Here, I can give him a 50 or a 20, and sang to them and gave concerts to them. But Shlomo really made a personal decision, which was great conflict to him, of leaving the strict Orthodox context of teaching and spreading and reviving the Jewish spirit, and also contextualizing the Jewish experience rather than being kind of an imitation memory play of what the old world was in Europe. He really connected it to this culture. To the culture and the world that we were living in, and the living, breathing world. And I think the play very much talks about and contextualizes his personal relationship and struggles with the, European German ideas of which were not old Jewish Sephardic ideas. I'm talking about a particular framework of of keeping the sexes completely apart, not shaking hands, and that separation, and how that evolved into him suddenly becoming a free-spirited, free-loving guru in 1960s Summer of Love. I think you really contextualize that and understand who he was and what that whole relationship within himself was and his identity. So I think that we do hopefully understand who the person was more in the movie. And that's the most I could do.
Thank you. That question came online from Susan Rosenblum. Dari, how does it from Beeb Ashcroft? How does it feel to see your father's message conveyed in the play? And how can viewers help spread the Soul Doctor's message of love and tolerance after they get home from the theater?
That's a good question. How does it feel to watch him? It's nothing but pride. My father was born in, in Europe and led the Holocaust and was part of a great dynasty of rabbis. But he was raised from the beginning with a huge openness for all religions. He used to talk about how in his house, his father had the archbishop and the priest and every possible religion coming in, and they all came together. And he was told from when he was 3 years old, you're going to be a rabbi. And he actually one point took his kippah off his head, his yarmulke, and his twin brother cried because it meant he wasn't going to be a rabbi, and he just said he felt bad for his brother crying so much, so he said, okay, fine, I'll be a rabbi. And
But
in all his choices,
My last.
as he led, and he was
we owe them.
a great scholar and the highest level of understanding, depth in Torah knowledge. But every choice he made along the way reflects his big heart and his kindness. And I believe that his soul came into the earth to bring back the joy and the passion of Judaism that was lost in the Holocaust, because he endlessly talked about the 6 million and how the 6 million angels are with us and we're walking through them, and what choice he was to bravely go to churches and be inspired by the gospel religion and endless longing for connection to God uplifted something in this world. And so when I watch him and I see that he had this never-ending heart to follow that and bring the loss and the trauma and transform it into prayer and meaning, and it just inspires me to want to do the same in my life. So.
Beautiful. About 2 or 3 more questions. One from Darren Paltrowitz from from online. A Fathom question, Danny. Fathom is known for creating top-notch special events and screenings. How did you know you wanted this film to be presented through Fathom events as opposed to a traditional national rollout?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Fathom is a very unique phenomenon, not just as a company. Fathom is to me, the great cultural federation of America. People don't realize, and I'm learning this every day, that Fathom is a content provider of high culture and individual culture to very different faith-based and different communities and micro communities all throughout our country and in 45 different countries. They are so very involved and in touch with the micro communities and providing content for them. It's really the only and the last organization in America that has that kind of a vision of bringing people to the movie theater, because they look at the movie theater the way the movie theaters were originally built. There were community centers. They're where we saw the newsreels. They're where we discovered live vaudevillian actors. So this is the campfire. They've really created the town square, the storytelling campfire places, large and small, wherever the people are. And that dream, Shlomo and Nina traveled the world, wherever the people were. Most of the stories you asked me earlier about discovering stories, I hear stories every day because people know I'm connected to the show. Just the other day at a cigar shop, this salesman was telling me how Shlomo visited him in the hospital, gave him a private concert in the hospital. He had a hernia operation, and his father asked Shlomo to sign his album. He said, my son is in the hospital with a hernia operation. He couldn't come. He said, let's go. And he went to the hospital and played a concert for him. And that's really the spirit of Nina Simone and Shlomo Carlebach. They were there to fix the world, not to play where there's a lot of people. We're in Fairbanks, Alaska, little town, Bethel, Alaska, islands throughout Hawaii, little towns in North Dakota and Indian territories, small, little, beautiful theaters, large auditoriums. And I really would do anything I could. I really just pursued this relationship with Fathom until we really created this partnership and this message of harmony across America event at this time on Juneteenth, as it's so needed. And it's Soul Doctor, and it's really a medicine for today, for this year. So yeah, Fathom. I encourage people to go and look into Fathom in general, the content they provide and the outreach that they do.
I'm gonna take my 7-year-old neighbor Levy, who's a yeshiva student, to see Soul Doctor in Kew Gardens. I wanted to come to the Kew Gardens Cinema, the Lester's Kew Gardens Cinema, our lovely little art house, with my enclave, with my Jewish neighbors. I need that movie there, so I can take Levy.
We are gonna make sure that it is there. We have, do you remember in Jerusalem, even on AMC Times Square, they've never seen so many toddlers running around a movie theater. When people ask me about what is the the minimum age, I say it should be a warning that there are kids in the audience. If you want a nice quiet evening in the movie theater, it's more like an El Al flight to Israel. You got kids crying behind. It's not a joke. They're dancing on your head. It's not a makeout movie. It's really not. But I'll talk to you about Queens. Yeah, we need to find out about that. Really.
Any other questions from the house?
I have a question, and it's going to piggyback off of because I think folks already started talking about. My name is Richard, and I'm with an organization called Harlem CLX, which is Create Learning Experience. My job is really to work on community engagement outreach. So my question really would be, for a young person that lives in Harlem, why would they want to come to see the show? And I know the answer, but I would like to actually hear from you guys on what should I be telling them on why they should come to see the show.
Can I start?
Please do.
For me, who didn't really know Nina Simone so much until this show, just only that when I heard her sing, I vibrate, because like you feel her entirety in every note. But something that I love about the show is the impact she had on my father. How something about the way she brought herself gave him permission to bring himself too. And to me, that's an inspiration for the importance of how we understand how we impact, how just being so you as a child, as a part of any community, how you impact the person next to you. And every time you bring your strength and your bravery and your power, you affect ripples in unimaginable ways. Like if we sat and asked your mom, do you know that the way you sat and played piano would encourage thousands of Jews across the world to feel pride, which she just was being big, and gave my father the courage to be big back. And we all have that impact, and it's a gift to watch it.
Thank you, Dari.
Thank you, Lisa.
I think that considering my mother's background from Tryon, North Carolina, child prodigy, sixth of 8 children, born into a household that my grandmother was very, very religious. We have up to 13 ministers in our family. And example of how committed to the Bible my grandmother was. When I was 10 years old, it was a Sunday I wanted to go bowling, and she had to ponder if that was a sin. And I remember saying, Grandma, I don't think there's anything in the Bible that talks about bowling. So to be raised in that kind of a household, and for did you hear what he said? It's so Jewish.
It's true.
And so to be raised in that kind of a household, and to have, and as the impression I get is that Shlomo kind of had the same kind of restrictions. There were these rigid rules that the elders held to. And for them to live within those households, and then to reach a point within their own evolution where they said, we are going to find our own way. And to be fearless enough and courageous enough to go against the teachings, against the rules, and even against a lot of times we want the blessings of our parents. We may lie to ourselves and say it doesn't matter, but I think everyone in this room can say, when you do get the blessing after you told yourself, fine, I don't need your blessing. And then when you do get it, there's this relief, there's this sense of rightness to that, to go against that. Like my mom, one of her biggest laments is that she would always say that my grandmother was ashamed of her, and that she put her albums under the mattress. Now, the world revered Nina Simone. She had a great following, she had great influence, yet she would go home and she wasn't Nina, she was Eunice. And she had to go back into that persona, into that box. And also the part of her that never healed with regards to her relationship to those to whom she wanted real blessings from. And as we sit here today, and we talk about this, the influence that she continues to have, the friendship that she developed with this great man that is touching so many people of different faiths today. I say all that in a disconnected way, and to try to connect it to say that we all have our own paths. We all have our own reasons for being here. We all have our own impact to have upon the world and on each other. And oftentimes we have to follow our hearts and not doubt what we're feeling, even though we may feel so alone and just wonder, what is it that won't let me rest until I follow this path? Shlomo did that. My mom did that. Young people today are probably more confused than ever. There's too much information out there. There's no childhood anymore. And so too much is thrown at them at too young of an age. There's more depression and suicide and sense of identity crisis. Oh, we can talk about this all day. But our elders also were kind of saying the same thing when we were coming up. And so let this show be a beacon for those who are trying to find their way, to trust their hearts, to allow themselves, yes, we're going to fail. Yes, we're going to make mistakes, but it's about brushing yourselves off, knowing that it's all part of the process, and that the greater you awaits you. If you just follow your heart and know that that is the beacon, that is the GPS. And we stand upon the shoulders of the ones who walk before us, and the best of our ancestors lives on in us. Trust that. Trust the love that exists in all of us, even though it may be buried under forms that do not feel loving. The love is there. And that we will reach where we're supposed to go. And that they are the future generations of this world, of this planet. And that all of us have a story to tell. All of us or stand upon the shoulders of our ancestors. All of us are equally important. And when we all come together collectively, we can make this place a much better place to live in happiness and in harmony together.
What was your name, brother? Yeah, I have a specific Harlem, the show really started in Harlem, the movie. It was first discovered at the Kwanzaa Festival in 2020, for Martin Luther King's Day. Someone had come to a screening and it answered a great question of mine. Going back to the riots in Crown Heights, I was on a panel like this at Brooklyn College, talking about my parents and how I grew up with civil rights activists. And my mother had a volunteer school for Black kids, a core school, and a student from the Black student body with the Malcolm X glasses and everything, and real pride. He riveted me with following cogent question. He said, if you're presenting this relationship as friends, why are you Jews always telling us what you did for us? And you're not telling us, what about what we did for you? And he, as a gentleman, and I was so perturbed by that question for 20 years, really perturbed by that question. And I heard the answer. I say to myself, I wish I could meet that fellow again and talk to him. I didn't have an answer to that question. I discovered the answer to that question when in 2020, after the movie, a young filmmaker from Harlem came over to me and he said, you know why this is our story? Because this is the first time we were respected, that you realize what we have to give to the world. This is about what we did for the Jews. This is about how Black culture has revived the Jewish experience, which was a bankrupt, to quote your father, was bankrupt, completely bankrupt. It was worse than the first part of Sister Act. So this is a Harlem story. It's a Harlem story, and Harlem is the Jerusalem of the African culture in this country. So I really, it's meaningful to me that this is being talked about and shown and told in Harlem.
Do you think the kids will respond to this?
Yes, they would.
All right.
Representation does matter, and I really do think you have to trust the process. So, you know, I heard you loud and clear.
Yeah.
And the connections that you guys have talked about, how the film can bring about. And I think about, you know, when I was talking about Queens, cross-cultural experience for me, my classmates pouring Yiddish in my ear from a young age. Being told not to speak it in front of adults because it was the language of the ghetto, of course. And I went to my parents who were from North and South Carolina saying, what's a ghetto? Which brought about an entire conversation. And so this kind of cross-cultural pollination by two great people, I think of Rabbi Shlomo as a catcher, most of all, you know, because of my exposure to Jewish culture very, very young. I can still sing you the songs from Fiddler on the Roof, because that culture was given to me very, very young. And then my father lied and told me that Queens College was built for me, and that I had to sit shiver for Goodman, Trainer, and Schwerner. And so it's very different. And this is why my neighbor Levy gets to be my date at the screening of Solda.
Can we introduce David just for 1 second?
Yes, please.
I have a great surprise for you. The true conceiver, who is, you know, the real man of theater, and my mentor and brother and co-creator here. People tell me, wow, what a great book of the show, what a great story. The story has gone up and down and all around, and it's basically very skeletal. The actors turn it alive, but what makes this a true piece of theater, the one person who really was able to collaborate with Shlomo Carlebach on this, and Nina Simone on this movie, is David Schechter, my co-creator and lyricist, who was the first call I made when I was approached to write a show about Shlomo. And David Schechter, and the original director of the show way back.
Oh, I'm sitting in your seat now?
I resign.
Well, this was great. I mean, I would say, those are some really wonderful buttons. Are there any more other comments? Is there something you'd like?
Yeah, I
to
just
add?
want to say one thing, very simple, that I realized as I was coming over here, which is that both Nina Simone and Shlomo Carlebach, they were both soul doctors, both of them. It's not just Shlomo who's the soul doctor. You know, she was a doctor even.
Yes.
I mean, a doctor, I don't know what her doctorate was in, but I know she was,
She got a doctor of humanities.
okay, humanities, and certainly her singing and her music embodied that. But they were both doctors of soul. And in fact, in the first production, the first incarnation of Soul Doctor was a very rough workshop of it. The idea of a street musician was brought into the story. And evidently this is the real story that I've heard anyway of how Shlomo got the idea of using music to engage the bankrupt Jewish world and the people who, the young people who had lost their connection to Judaism. And he was looking for a way to do this, and he was coming against all these walls. And then he was in the subway or on the street. I don't remember which. Maybe you know this story, Dari. But the way I know,
Interview the source.
yeah. Do you want to tell? Do you know this version? Or shall I
I'm not
just go?
sure.
Okay, then I'll just go.
Start it, and then
So
I
this
can
is the
jump in.
truth. This is the truth. It might not be the fact, but it's the truth. It's that he came across a woman who was singing, a street musician, and I think of it in the subway for some reason, maybe because that's where I encounter these these musicians all the time. And she was singing her heart out with this in gospel music, and he was transfixed, and like he had this epiphany about this is what I need. This is, if I could do that, but with Jewish texts, that could enthrall people and bring them in as much as she's enthralling me. And that this was a Black woman who was doing this. And he went to her and he said, how can I do what you're doing? And she said, I'll teach you guitar. I'll teach you 3 chords. That's all you'll ever need. Just 3 chords. You can do every song that you ever want with those 3 chords.
And actually, all his songs are basically 3 chords.
Right, they're 3 chords. That's it. So it's all, so really she should be sitting here and I should be standing there. So yeah, so and in our piece, originally that was how it was done. There was a Black actress who was there with a guitar. He came upon her, and he gives her $20. And actually, this is great. I'll tell the joke. Why not? I'll ruin it. There's this great joke that Danny wrote.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. That that in the musical, the street musician is blind, and then he gives her $20, and she says, $20? And he says, I thought you were blind. She says, I can see anything $10 and up. Which is, it's like the best line in the show just about it. We've never had, let me just finish my thought, okay, if I may. So she asks him, you must be a rich doctor, you know, that you gave me $20. And he said, no, I'm a rabbi. And she says, so you're a soul doctor. And that's where the show got its name. And that's where he became the soul doctor. And now
Here we
your mother, yeah, is the soul doctor too. And here we are. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for coming today, June 13th on Fathom Events around the United States. 600th grade.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
That was so meaningful.
I was crying listening to you. Oh my God. I
I
needed it. I needed that. It was medicine. It was so medicine. I had to say.
You know,
And your intro was so good.
You tell me.
For the movie.
Thank
What
you.
did. It's
Thank
really
you very
great.
much.
It's really great.
Portrait, you can do whatever.
Let's
And
have
just-
some good time, just rewriting it and making it my own.
Thank